At the end of last month, I polled my channel members to see what AliExpress cycling product they would like me to check out next. And they voted for me to check out these little valve adapters from brand RideNow, who you probably heard of, most famous for their TPU inner tubes. However, recently they've been branching out into other products such as through axles, bike radars, and even these little tiny tyre pressure monitors. So yeah, what are these things? These are the RideNow TPMS1. And in theory, they are supposed to be a bit of a competitor to SRAM's TyreWiz technology. However, unlike the new SRAM TyreWiz stuff that's designed to work with specific zip wheels, these in theory can just be screwed onto any Presta valve. So in theory can turn any old wheel set into one with a smart tyre pressure monitoring system. And yeah, what's the point? Well, it means you can get a live tyre pressure reading on your head unit, such as your Garmin. So yeah, I thought these were quite a cool little gadget, especially maybe for gravel racing. You know, we've all had moments when we're trying to just do a little bit of a bounce up on our back tyre. Oh, is it gone a bit soft, or are my legs just feeling pretty rocky? It'd be nice to know just exactly what my pressure was looking at by just looking at it on my screen. But before we talk about whether it's useful to know your tyre pressure, we've got a lot of questions to ask about whether these things even work and if the pressure readings they're giving are accurate. So let's take a look at first what we get in the package, and then we'll get them on a bike and see how they perform out on the trails. Cracking open the box then. In the box, you get a little tiny instruction manual. There we go. It is a tiny little box actually. You get the two little monitors themselves, and you also get a little tiny coin cell battery, a second little tiny coin cell battery, which actually I'm surprised they've supplied, and a little spanner to help you install them. And that's it. Tiny little box, very, very efficient. And these are the little RideNow pressure monitors themselves. Taking a look at the instructions then, there is an app I need to get installed, and I also need to install like the utility on my Garmin through Connect IQ. So let's get all that set up and get them on a bike. Finally, they're both on there. That took forever. Right, well, we are now a couple of days later and I have finally got the RideNow valves installed and working on my bike. And oh my God, that was a difficult old process to get them going. I spent so much time fiddling around, constantly trying to repair, unpair, reconnect, disconnect to get these working. But I have finally managed it. On the phone app, it was really quite straightforward. Yes, it's a bit of a clunky Chinese app, but it does just work, and they did just pair. You have to use the battery, reinsert it to enter pairing mode, but you know, it did work. However, to pair them with the Garmin app, you have to first install a Connect IQ field for both the front and the rear, and then just like hold a button while you're in the settings menu for it. There's not like just a click to pair or anything, whilst inserting a battery into the monitor and just pray it's gonna pair. You know, the first few times I did this, it just did not work. I tried so many times. And then it turns out you have to hold one of the buttons on your Garmin till it beeps. And then when you exit the menu, then you have to put the battery in the pressure monitor and then wait a bit and then it will pair. But only sometimes. Sometimes it would just not do anything. However, I have got them working now, and it's safe to say, once they are paired, they seem to stay paired. So I haven't had to do that process again, even when I've shifted it between bikes to check it's working on multiple options. But yeah, if you're expecting it to just pair nice and easy like any old power meter or heart rate monitor, unfortunately, you are not going to be happy with this one. Yeah, it was a right old fiddly process. And another note on compatibility, from what I've seen on reviews and also from their documentation, it appears to only be compatible with Garmin or on a phone app with iPhone or Android. If you're a Wahoo user or one of the few people who own a Hammerhead, yeah, you're out of luck. However, if you own a Hammerhead, you're probably SRAM sponsored and you're using zip wheels anyway. But we are installed now, and I'm actually going to pull them off my time and throw them onto my gravel bike to get out and see how they perform out in the real world. And the reason I'm trying them on my gravel bike is I think gravel is far more of a suitable place for a pressure monitor than road. Oh, and one other thing you'll be glad to see is I left them attached to the bike overnight. I think it was over 24 hours. Checked the tyre pressure before and after, and there was only a drop of 0.1 bar between the two recordings. So I'm pretty confident there's not loads of air leaking out the valve. In terms of how they install then, well, I'll just take it off to show you. And basically what you do is you leave your valve core open, and then you just simply, once it's paired, thread it on like a normal sort of dust cap, except for with an open valve. You have to push down a little bit more than usual. Once it's nice and tight, it should seal onto the valve whilst letting a bit of pressure into the sensor and be able to record your tyre pressure. Now, I've not had any issues with this leaking, as we've just seen, despite being quite concerned about that. And you should then see, once it's paired as well, which is easier said than done, on your head unit, you should have a front and a rear reading. Talking accuracy then, I've just taken it off. I've got my digital Topeak pressure gauge. Let me just change that to bar, and let's see what this is reading at. 3.08. Now I'm going to put the RideNow back on, as we did lose a bit of pressure there. I'm doing it this way round because the Topeak does often lose a little bit. And as you can hear, when I screwed the valve on, we did lose maybe 0.1 bar or so. Right, now that's back on, let's go up to the Garmin and see what we're looking at. And yeah, front wheel 3.0 ticking to 3.1. So yeah, it's pretty much bang on the same as my Topeak gauge. As I said, it was 3.08 there. This is flicking between 3.0, 3.1. It's on the cusp of the borderline with how it's rounding. So it's pretty much perfectly in line with my digital pressure gauge. Very quickly, if you want to support my work even further, consider joining channel membership right here. It really helps the channel, and it means you get to vote on what items we check out next on the channel. But if that's not something affordable to you, just make sure you're subscribed and you watch every video fully, as that's what helps the most. Now I'm going to take them off and throw them on the gravel bike, which has newly been set up with Thunderbirds. Ooh. Actually, I was probably not meant to show you that bike yet. There's more coming on that one. 1.7 in the front, 1.9 in the rear on my 2.1 inch Schwalbe Thunderbirds. Let's see how they handle getting out on the trails. So, I'm back from testing now, and it's safe to say not everything went quite to plan. As you can just see, just after I cut the footage, well, a short lapse concentration left me hitting the deck. I seemed to take a slightly different line from usual, merging back onto the main road, up on the Cat and Fiddle, and whacked into a curb that I hadn't noticed as I was checking the road was clear from traffic. And yeah, completely decked it, giving my head a bit of a bash in the process. Fortunately, I feel pretty fine and I've just got a few minor grazes, but RIP the iconic laser aeroshell helmet. Yeah, I've cracked it. So unfortunately, I'm going to be needing to get myself a new helmet. I'm thinking of trying that Van Rysel one, but let me know in the comments if you've got any recommendations. However, I'll shut up whinging about my injuries now and back to these RideNow TPMS sensors. I've actually found they've been performing really well out on the trail. On that whole ride, including the crash, no issues with the accuracy, didn't have any dropouts from the Garmin, and yeah, they just worked. Now you could say they do look a bit silly on your valves, and they definitely will have some sort of aero penalty, I'm sure, but actually, they work really quite good. And the fact that you don't need some weird proprietary wheel integration like SRAM needs you to have with the TyreWiz, yeah, it's pretty cool. And safe to say, I think these are actually quite a nice product. But obviously, as you heard when I was getting them set up, there are some really clear downsides to these. And I think it mostly comes with the level of documentation and how easy it is to set up. Because there's basically no help online if you can't figure these out, other than that tiny little manual you get in a box. That is the only information I could find on these sensors, and it was basically just a trial and error process. Now, I'm pretty good at getting things like that to work,
And even then, it was a right faff. So if you're someone who doesn't want a faff, I really strongly would not recommend these. But once you've got them up and running, they do seem to work well. However, they are quite limited. For example, I have no idea how I would go about changing them from bar to PSI. You can do it on the phone app. There is a toggle for that, but there's no user interface whatsoever on the Garmin. I would assume that setting needs to be changed on whatever device is receiving the signal rather than on the sensor themselves, as I doubt there's much computation going on in here. I imagine it just sends some sort of raw data value that your Garmin or phone app will interpret. They work, they give an accurate tyre pressure reading, and if that floats your boat and you want to be able to view your tyre pressure live on your Garmin, whether that be gravel racing or if you're just a bit of a data nerd like me, they're quite a cool product, and I probably will keep running them on my gravel bike. However, I do think they're a bit of an eyesore, and yeah, they're a bit chunky, aren't they? It'd be nice if they could slim down the profile, especially this little cap at the end, to get them a little bit stealthier. You'll have to let me know what you think. Do you think they are worth all the faffing trying to get them set up in order to get a tyre pressure reading? And do you think it's even like something that really matters at all? Clearly, there isn't that much of a market for it. Otherwise, every single Chinese brand under the sun would have copied SRAM by now. And because they seem to work actually pretty well once you've got them installed, I will leave a link to where you can buy these sensors in the description below. Just note, it will be an affiliate link. But I'll leave you all there, and definitely get yourself excited for that gravel build. You've got a sneak glimpse of it, but there's more to come on that, and there'll be a full build video coming in the next few weeks. So if you're not already, make sure to smash the subscribe button and consider joining channel membership. It really helps support the channel further. But until the next one, I'll see you all soon.